Hey everyone, today we're looking at an NES top loader, and you guessed it, it has some problems. In my experience, this system is pretty rare to come by, and this is actually the first one I've ever held in my own hands. I'm a big fan of this dogbone style controller that it came with back in the day. The exterior condition is a little dirty as expected, but overall it's not too bad. As I often say, nothing else truly matters with it as long as we can play video games. And that's exactly what we cannot do. The reason, in fact, seems to be that it just won't power on at all. Unfortunately, the top loader has no power light to indicate whether it's on or off, but since we have no audio and the screen doesn't even flicker when I hit the power switch, I'm pretty convinced it's just not booting up. So let's get inside and see if we can fix it. Unfastening these 4 game bit screws is all we need to remove the top shell. Then these 5 Phillips screws hold the game slot, ground shield, and the circuit board. With those out, we can remove the board, and the first thing I want to look at is the power switch, because if that were faulty, it would easily explain the problem of no power. I'm checking with a multimeter in continuity mode here, and I get no signal across the pins when the switch is off, and that's normal. Now when I turn the switch to the on position and check again, I do get a signal, which is also normal. In other words, the power switch is fine. So now I'm wondering if this large capacitor near the power input is bad and causing our problem. I attempt to test it, but the multimeter I'm using isn't quite capable for this, and I don't have a proper LCR meter to check it. So just to rule it out, I'd like to replace it with a new one. To get to it, we have to remove a few more screws, including this one tied to the heatsink of the voltage regulator, and then remove this shield. Now we'll desolder the old capacitor and replace it with this new one. When that's done, we try a functional test and sadly get the same result as before, still not turning on. I'll swap back in the old capacitor, even though I'm still not certain whether it's good, I'm just trying to re-baseline. Next I'll try something I should have done a while ago, which is checking the incoming voltage and the output of this 5-volt regulator. First, I'll test the power supply itself, which is reading 16 volts. This is somewhat odd since it's a 12-volt adapter, but it's been working well for a long time on my original NES, so I don't think it should be a concern here. When we plug it in and check the regulator input, we are getting the supply voltage of 16, which is good. On the output side, we should be getting 5 volts, but what we actually read is nothing. So there is a problem with the power circuit, and the first step I'll take is replacing this voltage regulator with a fresh one. We'll reflow these 3 pins to pull it out and clean up that area. Then we'll get our new one ready, and I'll screw it to the shield so that it's set to the correct height when soldered in place. After soldering, I tested it out and we still had no power. I must have been getting anxious at that point because I don't have footage of the test. But long story short, the voltage regulator was not the problem either. Next up, I started looking closer at the power circuit and found exposed copper under this bridge rectifier. And there was suspicious residue leading to the transformer, so I decided to remove both of these components to get a closer look. After doing that, what I see resembles what would happen if I were to detonate a small firecracker right on top of the board here. The main damage is on this line, which should be connected, but isn't based on a quick check with the meter. I spent some time cleaning up that area and checked the transformer, which reads low resistance on both sides, but does have continuity, so I believe it to be okay. I checked the rectifier next, which is basically a square array of 4 diodes, and the meter is telling me it's bad, but like with the capacitor test, I didn't really trust it. So before buying a new rectifier, I simply reattached these components and then shorted that disconnected path from earlier with a decent sized wire. Now when we test things, I'm not getting any voltage at the regulator output or the input, and then I started to notice that the repair wire I added is heating up rapidly. So I turned the console off before things start burning. At this point, it sure looks like that rectifier is indeed our problem, creating a dead short with the supply, which is how the original circuit line burned up in the first place. I bought some new rectifiers, and testing these with the meter yields a passing result. On each diode leg pair, we should get 0 volt in one direction and half a volt in the other direction. Trying that again on the old part, we get 0 volts on everything, so this rectifier is failing to prevent reverse current flow, causing the short in our power circuit. At this point, I'm convinced that replacing the rectifier with a working one will solve the issue, so we'll take the new rectifier and solder it in place. I still need to make the connection with this orange wire to bypass the circuit board damage that we saw earlier. At this point, I could check the voltage again, but I just decided to go straight to a functional test with the game.
No way.
It looks like we have some life, so let's reassemble the shield and the remainder of the console. I'm fast forwarding a bit since this process is pretty straightforward without too many parts or screws to worry about. The exterior is a little dingy, so I spend some time cleaning just to make it look a bit nicer. And I think that's pretty good, so let's do our final test. Alright, well everything looks to be in working order now, and we're happy about it. In spite of chasing a few false flags at the start, we were able to narrow down to the root cause in that bridge rectifier, and replacing it was the solution in this case. I'm so glad we were able to save this top loader, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time, and take care.